Ha 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 ha! Ha 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 ha! Whose laugh is that? It's a trademark laugh, and we're about to find out. This is Funny Like a Clown podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth, episode 74, August 24th, 2020. Here to discuss Icon, going way, 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 way back in comedy. Phyllis Diller. Wow, it just blew my mind, her career. I knew a little bit about her. Now I know more about her, and I'm about to share that with you. As always, Funny Clown Podcast brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. For the spicy, sweet, savory taste at game time, go to www.gvegas.wibs.com and get some lightning in your mouth. Get some buffalo sauce delivered right to your home. Man, I'll tell you, there was, nowadays there's probably 50-50 women comedian and comedy as there are men. Back in her day, weren't many around, man, and she was the one who stood out. So out of the handful there were, she made the most of it. Actress, comedian, best known for her eccentric stage persona. So you thought Elton John was eccentric. Well, before Elton John, there was Phyllis Diller being eccentric. Her self-deprecating humor. You thought Rodney told jokes putting himself down. Well, before Rodney, there was Phyllis Diller putting herself down. Wild hair and clothes she was known for. You thought Lady Gaga was the first to do that? No, 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 no. Go back to Phyllis Diller. And her exaggerated crackling laugh. You thought Gilbert Gottfried had a funny laugh? Well, she was the original. Phyllis Diller. All these kids today in comedy, they think they invented everything. When you go to a comedy show, when you grab the mic, I invented that. Now, you didn't invent shit, okay? They were doing stuff in comedy long before you were around, and that's why you need to know the history of comedy. You want to be a good comedian, you need to know the history of comedy, okay? That's what's going to educate you to be a better comedian, okay? Know what's been done. Let's see. One of the first female comic icons in comedy. You'd have to put it. She's back with the originals, man. Comedy started on radio before there was television. I mean, before radio, there were no iconic stars. You had your local theater stars, and that was it. Okay, radio took over. Now you could hit a bigger audience, and that's when the icons started to form. When you could hit more than just your local audience. When you could get out to a wider range of people. You got to put her in there with the Carol Burnett's, the Lucille Balls. I mean, the ones who paved the way. Credited as influenced, these comedians said that this was the woman who influenced them. Heard of these people? Joan Rivers, Roseanne Barr, and Ellen DeGeneres, among others. And, for our generation, we look at Joan Rivers as the godmother of, stand-up comedy. Well, there was somebody before Joan Rivers, may not have been, our lifetime, but before that, it was Phyllis Diller, and she's the one who paved the road for Joan Rivers to do. So Joan Rivers may be the godmother of comedy for our time, but for our parents' time, it was Phyllis Diller. There was one before her. No matter what you did, there was somebody before you. Let's see. She had a huge gay following, and she became iconic, an icon in the gay community. And she says she loved hanging out with gay people, which they are nicer people than your average people that you meet. So I work with them a lot in comedy. Most polite people I work with, most friendly people, and unlike a lot of the young comics, they're not looking to put you down. They're looking to bring you up. And that's a much tougher thing to bring people up than it is to put people down. Remember that one. She was open about plastic surgery. So who knows? Before Joan Rivers, she was so open about how many plastic surgeries she had. I think on the Joan Rivers roast, they were making fun of her. How many surgeries have you had? You used to look your age. Now you don't even look your species. I mean, but before Joan Rivers was an advocate for plastic surgery, Phyllis Diller was talking about it before her. So how long have they been doing plastic surgery for? It makes you wonder. I didn't even know that it even existed in her day and age. But apparently, if she was a spokesperson for it, then I guess it did, all right? Like you get a nose job back then or something like that. I mean, they've taken it to another level now. They could recreate your whole face. But, I mean, I guess back then, if you had a nose job or a boob job or something, that's, that was the beginning of plastic surgery. She was in over 40 films, so that's a legendary film career right there. You get one or two films are good. You get in 40, well, you're a regular. Her first was Splendor in the Grass, was the first film she was in. And let's see, television credits Included Night Gallery, The Muppet Show, Love Boat, Sybil, Boston Legal, and 11 seasons of The Bold and Beautiful. Hey, The Muppet Show, man. I mean, I remember as a kid. I mean, these were some of the places. My parents watched her, but I mean, I got some memories of her. It was before my time, but I do know who she was, and I did see her, from watching shows with my parents, and certainly The Muppet Show was a show every kid watched, and that was a show, your parents could watch it for Phyllis Diller, and you could watch it for the Muppets, but while you're watching it for the Muppets, you're also finding out who Phyllis Diller was. Voiceover work, I've always told you, man, big money in voiceover work. That's why these cartoons were a hit. Mad Monster Party, A Bug's Life she was in, The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius, Family Guy, just, a lot of cartoon voiceover work there. Keeping relevant, making money, safe move. All the kids like the cartoons. You always wonder how somebody gets started in comedy, and this one's a little bit different, okay? And I remember I did one about George Burns where there were kids working in a little candy shop or something, and they used to sing while they worked, and one day they were singing and people were throwing pennies down the stairs. They liked them so much, and that was just a strange way to get you started, just singing while you work. Then they went out and started singing on the street, and people throwing pennies at them. They didn't have to work, they sang. But here's how she got her start. Interesting way. Her parents brought her to funerals at a young age, which, I mean, that's a parental decision. Do you think, your kid's old enough to go to a funeral yet, or is he too young to understand what's going on and see a dead body? Well, I guess she was a little bit young, and she said it gave her a greater appreciation for life, because if you see a lot of people death and you wonder what kind of life they lead, you realize you're going to end up there someday. I remember at my first funeral my parents took me to. I was young, and geez, I was standing there just looking, and then my mother came up and kind of walked me away because she saw I was in a little bit of shock there. And but she used, from her shock from seeing so many dead people at a young age, she said she used comedy as a form of self-therapy. Okay, which comedy, hey, it's a great thing. You got something that's bugging you in life, you learn to laugh about it. Otherwise, it'll drive you crazy. You don't want it to drive you crazy, so you make jokes about it. Okay. And that's why I got the character, the child sports superhero, because I got drove crazy in family court, saw my child suffering, not a thing I could do about it. You get to the point you say, you know what, this is so far past ridiculous, I'm just going to laugh about it. That's how she found her humor. Said she was never the class clown in school. She actually took school seriously, but she enjoyed making her friends laugh after school. So I guess there, everybody... Remember Jackie the Joke Man told me that he remembered every joke he ever heard, and I was like that too. If I heard a good joke, it'd stick in my head forever. I'm going to tell that to somebody else someday, man. That's mine now. I heard that. Every kid, wanted the hot joke, so when you can make people laugh, it's always a cool thing. You become the life of the party. You become the ring in your circle. Let's see, 1952, she began working at WROW radio station in Oakland. There she filmed several short spots for a local TV show offering advice in a bathrobe to homemakers. I guess she was like the original Dear Abby, offering advice to all the women sitting at home, homemakers. And but I guess she did it in a humorous way, where Dear Abby did it in a serious way. She did it in a comedic way, so getting a little bit of different edge there. At the encouragement of her husband, she tried comedy at an open mic at the age of 37. So, hey, there's a late start in the comedy world. Most, kids nowadays in the 20s. She's 37 and kids, and she tried it in San Francisco. Get this, her first gig was at the Purple Onion. Does that just sound swanky or what? Where was your first gig? It was at the Purple Onion, baby. But I got nowhere to talk. I started on a place called the Red Onion in Baldwinville, Mass. A little dive bar, but it's where you work out your material, man. You tell a bunch of drunks some jokes, and somebody pays $20-25 to get into a comedy show, you got their full attention, okay? If you go to a bar and you got a bunch of drunks who don't even know you're going to be there and you get them laughing, you really accomplished something then. Then you're ready for the big time, okay? So, great learning experiences there. Her first pro booking as a comedian went well. She said a 2-week booking turned into 89 consecutive weeks. So, I mean, apparently fans were loving her so much they couldn't get enough of her. They just kept booking her at different places, and she kept working. So, who knew that? You went out for a 2-week, booking comedy adventure. You're probably happy to get the 2 weeks, and it turns into 89 consecutive weeks. That's a roll right there, baby. She's on a roll. She said, while she was doing all these places, she never ever saw any other women on the comedy scene, and that's what makes her a pioneer. All the guys were doing it, she was right there doing it. No other women among her. So I mean, she was a pioneer for women in the comedy industry. I mean, not that there wasn't others doing it, but I mean, there weren't many, and she wasn't seeing any. So you want to hang out with your comedy buddies? Well, your comedy buddies are men. You ain't hanging out with the girls anymore because there ain't any around. She put down her influences as Sid Caesar, Milton Berle, and Jonathan Winters, which some of the legends right there of those days. You know, certainly Milton Berle going back to radio. Yeah, the first TV, but they were all on radio before that. That's where it all began. Let's see. Our first national TV spot came on Groucho Marx's You Bet Your Life. And that was one of the big shows back in the day, man. That's like the Tonight Show. You know, you get on there, you're made. Well, Groucho Marx, he was the guy. He could make you back in the day. She had multiple bookings on the Jack Parr Tonight Show. He was the guy doing it before Johnny Carson. So once Groucho and Jack Parr gave her a break, that led to the big break. Who was there before Johnny Carson? Who was the big guy show you wanted to get on? It led to a show appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show, and before Johnny Carson was the television icon, Ed Sullivan was the television icon. You got on his show, you were at the top of your game. Only the best of the best was on there, man. So, hey, she worked her way up. She paid her dues. She got her shot on the Ed Sullivan Show. Once you're on there, it was kind of like the Tonight Show. If you got the okay from Johnny Carson or the wave over the couch, boom, you were a made comic back then, because that was the only place you could see stand-up comedy. I mean, people recognize you from TV. You're a legendary act now. Well, she started performing comedy all over the U.S. after that appearance, because she was a made comic once you do something like that. Where nowadays, you know, we've said before, you get on the Tonight Show, it's a cool thing, man, but you're not a made comic anymore. It's not like instant fame overnight. I mean, great one to have on your resume. It's going to get you some work, but it's not the instant fame that it used to be back in the day. I actually posed a question recently. I mean, podcasts are such a big thing, and they're worldwide, where, you know, I mean, the Tonight Show is such a legendary show, but I mean, it's only here in America. You might get reruns or whatever, but would you rather be on, you know, the Tonight Show or the Joe Rogan podcast? And, you know, most of the older people said, oh, the Tonight Show, because they remember all the legends on it. Most of the younger kids said the Joe Rogan podcast. You know, you get a couple minutes on the Tonight Show, you know, the Joe Rogan podcast, it's a bigger form, and he's worldwide. He's hitting more people than the Tonight Show. So if you're looking for fans, young fans to come out to your show, I guess the Joe Rogan podcast. And somebody said if you want a nice little thing to show mom, you go on the Tonight Show. But it's still the legendary show. If you're going to do television, man, that's the show to be on. While she was performing all over the U.S., she released multiple comedy albums. Wet Toe and a Hot Socket. Are You Ready for Phyllis Diller? The beautiful Phyllis Diller among them. That was back when you could actually make money putting out albums, which, you know, you can't do it anymore. They've turned into an advertisement tool, where back in the day, you put out a comedy album and you charge $10 for it. Then you charge, you know, 20 bucks to come see you in concert. Where nowadays you got to put out a free comedy album, and now you got to charge 40 bucks to come see you in concert, because you got to make up for the money that you lost on the album, because everybody's downloading them for free. So that's how they're doing it now, and I guess technology forced them to meet halfway, because, you know, back then if you got a bootleg tape, you know, it'd sound like crap. Nowadays with the digital stuff, I mean, you go to a concert and it's as good as what they're putting out on their DVD specials, so they can't really hide any work if everybody's got a cell phone with a recording device in their pocket. So you give it for free and you make up for it with live shows. That's the only thing they can do. Let's see. Here's one you didn't know. In 1960s, okay, when she was doing stand-up, Barbra Streisand was her opening act. We all know what Barbra Streisand went on to do. Well, she was opening for Phyllis Diller. That was one of her opening acts. I guess her major break came, I mean, not that these weren't major breaks, but I mean, the one that had launched her to the next level, Bob Hope, who was like the movie king of the time, man. He was the movie comedian king. Offered her roles in some movies, and she did, Boy Did I Get the Wrong Number, 8 on the Lamb, and the Private Navy of Sergeant O'Farrell. So I mean, you know, she was co-starring in these movies. It wasn't like, you know, it was Bob Hope and you know, guest star, you know, Phyllis Diller. She was a big enough comedian where she was a co-starring role in these movies. But you put two talents like that together, okay, Bob Hope and Phyllis Diller, something good's gonna happen. And they didn't get great critical acclaims at the, you know, from the critics, but they did mucho good with the fans at the box office. And if you're making money, folks, that's what it's all about. Okay, so just goes to show you don't always listen to the critics. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. Most of the time, they don't know what they're talking about. Okay, I put out a short film. You know, we're working on a full-length film now, but I put out a short film called From Preacher to Prophet, a Sam Kinison story, where Sam was my hero, and I had a bunch of 20-year-old kids who don't know jack squat about the business. You know, they attacked the thing, and I had a lot of people higher up in the business who do know about the business, and they actually appreciated what I did, and I got a lot of great compliments from people I respect. So, you know, who do you want to listen to? Okay, people high up in the business you respect, or a bunch of 20-year-old kids who don't know their ass from their elbow? Well, I'll take the latter. I'll take the people high up in the business. That's probably going to get you somewhere. Okay. Rather than a kid, man, nah, man, I could do better than that, man. Look at that, man. I'm going to go on Facebook and tell my friends what a hot comedian I am. Yeah, well, good luck getting booked, kid. Good luck with that, okay? Let's see. Phyllis Diller in the 60s, she was appearing on shows like What's My Line, Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, Hollywood Squares. I mean, these were the big shows of the time. I mean, this was stuff our parents grew up on. These were the prime time, you know, top television shows of the time. Into the 70s, again on the top shows of the time, The Gong Show, The Match Game, The Muppet Show, The Love Boat, The Drew Carey Show, Seventh Heaven, and my personal favorite, this is where I remember her the most from as a kid, 1972, she was on the new Scooby-Doo, and I must have seen some reruns of that years later as a kid, but I remember her on the new Scooby-Doo, and that was my first experience with Phyllis Diller. And I remember, you know, she always had the cigarette on a stick there, I guess. But I guess she never smoked. I didn't know. It was just a prop, you know. She put like a little wood thing burning on the end that she never really smoked a cigarette. It was all just part of her act with her big hair get up and her crazy suit get up. And it's all a shtick, folks. It's all part of the shtick, okay? But, yeah, certainly, I mean, Scooby-Doo, she's on all the top shows of the time. And she did, again, some voice work, man. Never underestimate the power of voice work. I can't stress that enough in comedy. Robot Chicken, Family Guy, Hey Arnold, the Power Rangers, the Powerpuff Girls, Animaniacs, Jimmy Neutron, King of the Hill. These are all cartoons. Now, I want to make a point of this, okay? Because she's on, like, you know, The Gong Show and The Love Boat. Okay, now these are all stuff that our parents grew up watching, okay? Later on, she's on the Drew Carey Show, okay? She's on Seventh Heaven. She's on the Muppet Show. These are all stuff I watched. So she's entertaining my parents. She's entertaining me. As if that ain't enough, all these cartoons I just mentioned, my kid was watching too. She's entertaining my kid too. That's 3 generations of my family. This woman's entertaining right here, okay? My parents, me, and my children. What more can you ask for in comedy than that right there, than to entertain 3 generations of somebody's family? That's when you go down as an iconic comic right there. So, hey, hats off to Phyllis Diller, man. She paid her dues. And, you know, she self-admitted, man, comedy's a tough game. You know, she had, I think, 5 or 6 kids, and she said she regretted later in life that, you know, she had to neglect her kids at times where, you know, comedy would demand her time and she wasn't there for her kids. So there's always a price to pay in comedy. She paid the price of it. She retired in 2002, and she still was a best-selling author. She was an accomplished musician. She actually went to college for music, didn't follow it up. She chose comedy instead, but very accomplished musician and an artist. So I guess she had all kinds of talents that we didn't know about. How big was the lady in comedy? At her retirement party in Vegas, the people that came out to pay tribute, Don Rickles, Roseanne Barr, Red Buttons, Lily Tomlin, and Joanne Worley. So, I mean, these are some major comedians paying respect to this woman right there because, you know, this is the person that inspired them to do what they do. And you see this guy behind me, Sam Kinison, he's the guy who inspired me to do what I do. And I'm passing it on here with Funny Like a Clown podcast, I guess. Hopefully someday people will listen to these and realize, you know, that history's past is such an important thing. And, you know, we're finding out cool stuff together. After her retirement, she did make some cameos and guest appearance. She was on Roseanne Barr's reality show on one episode. She showed up, did some stand-up on the Jay Leno's Tonight Show, and did a little sit-down with him, too. So even after she retired, she'd pop up here and there. you know, what can you say about a great comedian other than, 30 years in the business, interaging that many generations? August 20th, 2012, she was found passed away in her home at the age of 95. And if you make age 95, you've lived a damn good life. So she lived a damn good life, and hats off to her for all the entertainment she gave three generations of people. And she's probably, if you say Joan Rivers was one of your influences in comedy as a female comic, well, who is Joan Rivers' influence? It goes back to Phyllis Diller. So you're a fan of Phyllis's if you're a fan of Jones and you don't even flippin' know it. We had a few chime-ins from the fans here. Let's see what they had to say. We didn't have many, but we did have a couple. And hey, this show's for the fans, about the fans, with the fans. So if any of you guys want to chime in, you go find the Facebook page, Funny Like Clown Podcast, and you can start chiming in too. Lisa Tringali, she was at her best paired up with Bob Hope, and how could you not be? When you put two talents like that together, something good's bound to happen, man. You can't have that much humor in one room and not laugh. It's impossible. Patty Punch writes in, her husband Fang, and I guess that was like Rodney Dangerfield's doctor, Vinny Bumbatsu, I guess. Was a made-up doctor. Well, when she was doing her acting, whenever she referred to his husband, that was the name that she gave her, Fang. Yeah, I guess he was like the biter like a vampire. Who knows what was going on, but that was her stage name for her husband, was Fang. Rob Steen writes in, how precious she was with the new comedians. Always had your back 100%. I've said that before. It's so important in this game, and it's not even important. It's a responsibility. I mean, when you've been in comedy for a long time, it's your responsibility to bring up the next generations and pay back, to the young comics what the older comics did for you when you first started. So it's certainly a good thing to always give back. And when you meet the good ones, most of them, they're willing. They want to pass on what they learned. Who wouldn't, okay? After they're gone, what's going to be left, okay? The young kids, that's who's going to take on comedy. They're the future of comedy. Like Yoda said, pass on what you learn. When you become a Jedi of comedy, pass on what you've learned to the next generation. AZ Zim, my number one favorite, and I always think of the phone in her kitchen with the names that she said do not answer if they call. Jonah Carson was on it. Also, her room upstairs with all the outfits she wore and how heavy they were, and how she would always laugh because we both had the same laugh. And it was a stage laugh, and maybe AZ's got the same laugh, but she said it was more when girls get nervous, that's what they do. They just laugh about it. Ha, 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 ha. And she said she was nervous on stage, and that was how she dealt with it. And I look back at some of my comedy routines when I first started, and I'm sitting there telling a joke, and every time I'm going, You do that because while you're talking, you're trying to think of what your next line is because you ain't got it memorized yet. So it's a way, you deal with it, and that was her way of dealing with the nerves up there. Yeah, those eccentric outfits, man, I'm sure they weren't easy to wear. I mean, they got the notices. What the heck am I wearing there? She told a lot of jokes about what she was wearing, but everybody has a stick, and that was her stick, I guess, right there. So, Phyllis Diller, I guess we'll leave off saying, an iconic comedian, a pioneer for female comics. I mean, when you're one of the first, women breaking the barrier, anybody who breaks the barrier, Jackie Robinson, the first black baseball player, who's the first to do anything, I mean, she was the first, iconic female comedian of her time. Where, I mean, like I said, there were probably some, if you go to your local theater, hey, you got Mama whoever who's been doing, comedy here forever, but that wasn't on a national level. When radio came along, TV came around, things started to boom. She paved the way for the women. She paved the way for the Joan Rivers, for the Carol Burnett's, for the Goldie Hawns, for the next generation. And, the Joan Rivers and Goldie Hawns and Carol Burnett's, they paved the way for the Roseanne Barrs and the Whitney Cummings, the Amy Schumers, and everybody you see today. So give back, folks. If you're a comedian listening to this, give back to the younger comedians. Don't be an ass to them. Unless they're an ass to you, then I guess you got to be, because, don't take no shit from nobody. But if you find a good young comedian, man, which ain't easy because they all think that somebody owes them something nowadays, but try to give back. If you're not a comedian, man, whatever field you're in, okay? If you make pizzas, okay, when the next young pizza maker comes in, teach them how to make a great pizza, okay? If you're a woodworker, okay, pass on what you've learned about wood to the next young woodmaker, because they're the future of anything. And the future is laughter, folks. This is Funny Like Clown Podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth. Keep laughing. Pass on that laughter. Make the next generation laugh, because you always need something to laugh about. Till next week, smile.